Divide, you made this?
Hey, welcome everybody to Fentanyl Facts and Stories. I am Charlie Perry, along with my host here, Paula Santos Young, and our guest, Scott Johnson, Deputy Chief Scott Johnson. He's works in a local fire department, also part of the hazmat team, and a strong advocate for fentanyl and facts about fentanyl. And him and Paula have worked in numerous things, and they share much information to each other to get the information out to keep us all safe. It's the information is so important because a lot of people are they're not unaware, but they're uneducated what the dangers of fentanyl and what it does to you, especially fentanyl poisoning. So, Scott, welcome aboard of
Hey,
this
thanks, Charlie.
podcast. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. What? I mean, you must have been going down the wrong street when you ran into Paula. What?
Yeah,
What?
I met down at UMass when she was doing a symposium, and she
Okay.
worked with a guy named Dave Gorio, and I know him from the past. And
Yeah.
one of the big things with the fentanyl crisis is there's something new every day. So just when you
Yes.
think something is like, oh, I think I know some stuff, something new pops up. One of the big things that Paul and I have been advocating is if you really look at some of these pills that we do in our presentations, they're the SpongeBob pills or the candy. It's marketing. It's all about
Mhm.
marketing and convincing people it's a good thing. And we always advocate, like, there's no safe pill out there anymore. I grew up in the 80s, and out there, people experiment with drugs, and your drug dealer more or less had some stuff here or there. There's some bad stuff every now and then. But nowadays, we're seeing it in the statistics say 7 out of 10 pills are fake. And it's pretty sad when you see pills that people think they're Xanax. They think they're pills to solve one problem, but they end up having fentanyl in them. And I've tested many pills. Even the police officers you talk to nowadays, in the old days, they could look up something and say, hey, that looks like MDMA. That looks like meth.
Mhm.
That looks like something. Nowadays, I've tested pills thinking, oh, that's MDMA, no question. And it turns out being the meth in it or fentanyl in it. So you just don't know what you're getting at all. And I think that my big push with this whole thing is we need to work more on a systems approach. I think too many times people are working individually, doing great work individually, but sometimes we're copying the same stuff. So if Paul is doing something and Charlie's doing something, well, we're almost doing the same thing, spinning our wheels instead of really looking at more of a big system approach. So
I agree.
Sorry. But when I equate it to like when I do a hazmat call or a fire call, I have to size up the whole fire or hazmat, and I have to put an action plan together. And what's that action plan? Once I put the action plan together, is it working and does it make things work? Because if it's not, I have to change my direction. And I talk about a lot of times in my talks of if it's not fentanyl today, if I take all the fentanyl off the street today, it's going to be something else in the future. A lot of these drugs were invented back in the 50s and 60s. There's actually books you can go on the recipes. And the drug dealers have all these books. And if fentanyl is not the cool thing now, they'll make a combination of some other drug and make that out. So it's just a sort of general idea of what I have. If you want to ask questions or something like that. We've seen xylozine's been a big thing. If you're not aware of xylazine, that was a big push. But then also recently in Worcester, back in August, it's melatonin, which is again another tranquilizer used for animals, but that was found in Worcester, and that was only done by blood tests in the hospital that they found these people overdose with that. And Narcan doesn't work on that.
Can
Um,
you explain why, Scott, to folks that are
So,
listening? Because
yeah,
some people, I mean, obviously they hear Charlie and I, and we talk about Narcan, we talk about the dissemination of Narcan and how you should always have it with you. And sometimes I'll tell people, it's kind of like when you go into a school or a building, you have the fire extinguisher. You might
yeah.
not have to use it every day, but it's on the wall when you need it.
All right. So the Narcan's been around for a long time. It's been around since the 80s, maybe before that. I used it back in the 90s when I used to work up in the North Shore area on EMS calls. And what it does is it basically, and I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but it basically takes care of the opioids. So if you have opioid, like the fentanyls, oxycodone, things like that, that's what the Narcan works on. What it doesn't work on is other drugs like your benzos and things like that. So when you push Narcan and you have other drugs mixed in with the fentanyl, it's still a good idea to push it no matter what. But realize that some agencies are having these test strips for fentanyl. So if you test your drugs and it comes up with just fentanyl on that, you might have other drugs mixed in with that the Narcan won't work on. And that's a big misconception sometimes. I think that I have Narcan, my drugs test positive for fentanyl, I should be all set. But nowadays, like I said, there's other ingredients that get mixed in with this fentanyl that Narcan's not going to work on.
So, Scott, tell the people why Narcan will not work if you are giving it to someone or you're going to a person who is, a paramedic, right?
Yeah.
And they find that person and Narcan is not working because now there's xylazine in the system. Why won't Narcan work with the fentanyl and the xylazine mixture?
So what it does is I have to go back and look at my notes and stuff like that. But what it does basically is the receptors. So your drugs have certain receptors in the brain that are triggering different effects of the brain. That's what gives you your high and stuff like that. When you do the Narcan, it blocks those receptors, and that's when you lose the high. The other drugs, the way they act in the brain, and you have to get a doctor to tell you. I have to look it up and do my homework again on that. But that's what happens is those receptors aren't being taken care of. One of the things you can do is you can always do, most of these drugs here are respiratory in nature. In other words, the reason why you need the Narcan is because your respirations go down and you stop breathing. So even if the Narcan's not working, if you have a bag valve mask or do some kind of rescue breathing for someone, that's going to help them to at least get the oxygen into their blood circulating and doing those maneuvers. Because if you did that and didn't have Narcan, that would also work as long as the respirations are continued until you get the Narcan in. That's an important thing to do.
So should they be doing, a different response? Because I know that, Scott and I, for people who don't know, Scott and I were just at an event on Friday, a symposium that I was invited to, and Scott was there, and a lot of wonderful emergency management personnel were there for the state. And one of the things that was asked is, should you still do Narcan even if you know the person has had xylazine? And I think a lot of the responses were yes, right, Scott?
Yeah. So Narcan can't hurt. When I was a paramedic, we didn't have glucometers to measure people for like diabetes. We gave thiamine, which is B12. We gave Narcan, and we give glucose. So back in the old days of the ambulance, and we didn't have certain machines to test certain things. If you're unconscious, we gave you the thiamine, the Narcan, and the glucose to anyone who's unconscious. So it's not going to hurt. One of the best things about Narcan is no side effects to it. If it's not in your system and it doesn't work, no big deal. It's fine. It doesn't do anything differently. The most important thing is keeping those respirations going. So if the Narcan's not working, you want to do some rescue breathing. Bag valve masks is the best way to do it. It might be something to consider putting in with the Narcan, is putting bag valve masks in there so people can do the rescue breathing without doing the mouth-to-mouth type of thing.
Awesome.
So, question for you, because I know that one of the things we also heard was that there's a lot of different verbiage about what's happening, and obviously you see what's happening in our state. If someone were to say, hey, why are you and Paula teaming up and talking and doing these events? Because from what we understand, it's not as bad as you guys are saying. What would you say to that?
So I'd say one of the things is there's been a strong outreach for the Narcan, for the testing, for the harm reduction. So what's happening, I've talked to some friends of mine that work in different cities around the state. And what we're saying is a lot of times people are almost self-treating themselves, so it's not being reported to EMS. Data is real important. You can spin anything that you want to. So deaths are down. That's great. That means that EMS isn't seeing these people. Are we solving the problem? We're still seeing a lot of people with a lot of issues, a lot of problems. And one of the other things we saw, and I think you explained this quite well, Paula, was that domino effect. So it's not just that person overdosing and dying. It's the person overdosing that has other problems that are going on with their family. And then you have family involved. You have workplace issues involved. And there's a whole bunch of facets that go into that one person overdosing, how it affects your friends, your family, your work. It's just not one little facet of that. So I think a lot of times we look at stuff and say, oh, wow, we don't have that many deaths. Well, that's great. That's super. We've solved part of the problem. My big push is like, let's look at it from a whole systems approach of why people are doing this. Let's look at more people that have recovered from the fentanyl crisis and say, what made you successful? Because everyone is different. You can't treat this as a one-shop thing. I've dealt with a lot of people with alcohol problems and stuff like that. Every person is different. Everybody's body is different, how they react to treatments. So why don't we look at different treatments? Because not one treatment is going to fit everyone. There's some stuff, and I'm not advocating for this one way, but there's some stuff on hallucinogenic medications. Again, medications, not just going out and doing it. And maybe some more natural remedies that might work, might not work, but try and figure out what works, because it might be like 4 different solutions for the 4 of us here. And each person is going to be able to figure out which, what works best for them, working with a doctor, working with, the medical community on that. But there's not a quick fix. I think the problems with this whole crisis is why do we advertise medications on TV? Like why should I be influenced over advertisement, whether I take some drug that's going to reduce weight, that's going to clear my skin up, going to do something else? Why don't we leave that to the medical community, to the doctors, the researchers, to say, hey, you know what, this is the best treatment for whatever that may be. Why we get rid of the advertising? Because I think the problem is everything's a one quick fix pill. I get many tentacles to this. Look at our information. Everyone wants information like this. Everyone wants information fast. We all want to read the headline. We don't want to read behind the headline. So yeah, deaths are down. That's great. Now let's read behind the headline. Where do these people go? If we have one area in a city that's basically have a big drug problem, and all of a sudden it's gone, well, where did it go? Did you solve the problem, or just move on to another location?
But we also know that with the statistics coming out and when they're saying deaths are down, they're actually not, because we're seeing more of the fatal overdoses. And those are the numbers that unfortunately they're not being counted for as they should be, as we heard from the statistics side. Yep. And I know that last year there was a pretty big bust in Lynn, Massachusetts with fentanyl, where they turned them into heart-shaped candy. And from my understanding, it was enough to kill every single person in this state. I mean, what would you tell people who think that, this is just not a problem here in Massachusetts?
Yeah, so it's nationwide, and I guess it affects everyone. My big push is start local in the communities. Really get down to the community level. The national level is not going to solve this problem. There's too many factors involved. What I think is we as small communities, whether it's New Bedford, whether it's different other areas of Massachusetts, say, hey, let's get together as a community and start working as a team. And one of the things we pushed, and one of the things why my hazmat team is so successful is we bring in, when I do certain drug stuff, we bring in chemists, we bring in the police, we bring in the hazmat tech, different points of view of what we're there for to get the best solution out of it. And then let's reevaluate what we're doing, not keep on doing the same thing over and over again. But I think if we can get down into the root causes and really figure out why people need the drugs, why do you feel that need for it, and then how do you get that? And this is simplifying it way too easy, but there's a whole dopamine release. Our body, when we're happy, when we have that chocolate, we have that candy, your body feels that nice release of some dopamine going, that made me happy. So think about how we train people with like a dog saying, eat food, right? It sounds silly, but that's what we do. When you have a nice cheesecake or whatever seafood dinner, your body's happy. So you're missing something in your life. A lot of things I go back to is we're talking about a couple of different things. We have the recreational user who just wants to use it because they enjoy it, just like eating alcohol, smoking marijuana, smoking cigarettes. That's one person. Then we have another person who has medical conditions, pain, suffering, whatever that pain or suffering is, and that's another person. It's then you have another group of the one pill kills, which we've heard about that, where person is an A, and it's really sad. An A student doesn't do the drinking and driving, was a designated driver one night, and all of a sudden the kid's dead upstairs because they took a pill they thought was something else, and it's a one-time thing, and they're dead. So there's many facets of why people are doing this. It's not just one way, and we have to treat each one differently. Again, look at all the different problems, why people want this. And then our supply chain of this stuff is coming through the borders, coming through different methods. It's being done intentionally. When they make a bust one place, just something else pops up somewhere else. So we have to really get back to the community and take care of our community, take care of our kids. How do you get those kids engaged in things that make them happy? And again, I'm sort of simplifying a little bit, but I think we're better off doing a smaller level of community and then working together. So if New Bedford and Fall River get together and say, hey, this worked in New Bedford, maybe it'll work in Fall River, and we start doing that, and we sort of build a network of each other all throughout Massachusetts, we slowly start building a better organization.
Did we lose
Right.
the volume?
Yeah, maybe.
What? I'm sorry.
All right, there you go, Scott. You muted yourself by accident.
I basically saying that my big proponent is we got to start like the community level, and you got to start with the kids. So when I was in high school, we did like sewing class. I sewed an octopus. I did metal class. I had wood shop, and again, it had drama. It's like every person has a different thing that makes them feel like they're happy, they enjoy life with whatever that is they do. It's going to be different for everyone else. If we can start focusing on that, maybe we can start working on what that need is for drugs and getting that drug need. These drugs are made to be addictive, so that it's done on purpose. Again, it's a business. They're trying to make money, and there's a need out there for many different reasons. And we've been through a hard time through COVID with depression, isolationism, just sort of people trying to find their way to make them happy. And it's a lot different. My kids, I have 19, 23-year-old kid. It's a lot different for them than it was when I was growing up in the 80s. And you had more of a community thing out in the streets doing your own thing because you didn't have all the social media, all the pressures of this and that and the other thing. So again, I think there's many facets, and we have to look at all those and start figuring out what works and what doesn't work. But really talking to people that are down in the trenches, the people that have recovered, the people that are going through addiction, talk to them, talk to the mothers, talk to families that had the experience of losing someone, because they know better than anyone else. I don't know that. I've been very lucky in my life that hasn't happened to me. But every family goes through different trials, but you have to understand the actual problem before you can start fixing it, I think. And that's where we really need to work on.
I agree.
Now, would you agree? Charlie and I had, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? We had Eric Karen on from the
2 weeks.
Okay, yeah, 2 weeks ago we had a former Homeland Security and Intel agent, and Interpol. I'm sorry. And one of the things that he said on the podcast was, if you don't think that the cartel is in your city and town, think again, because they are. And they're infiltrating the kids. They are recruiting the kids. They're working with the gangs. And your number one drug dealer today is this right here.
Yeah. So I'll go right back to, because some of the stuff we have to be careful what I say, but go to the DEA website and look at the drug report, and they'll show you the states with the highest cartel areas, and one of them is Massachusetts. It's a lot on the east and west coast. It's on the coastal sides. Again, easy transportation in. One of the things we see on our side is a lot of stuff, all the methamphetamines, the pills, the drugs, that's all being shipped over now, manufactured in Mexico. It's not being manufactured in the United States. If the borders get closed up, we might start seeing more manufacturing in the United States. But right now, pretty much they're shipping it right over the borders. And as Paula was in Washington, D.C. at a conference there, We've had Senate hearings on this that, the Chinese are purposely bringing over chemicals. So when you make drugs, there's certain chemicals to make those drugs that you cannot buy mass in the United States. You have to have either a special license to buy it. You got to be like a university. It's controlled very well, so it's very hard to get. So why not just make it in Mexico, send the powders over, send the liquids over? I can take liquid, bring it over, looks like water. I can do a few things to it, and then all of a sudden I get these crystals growing. Just a science project. So I'm growing this thing that comes over the board. It looks like water, or it doesn't seem like any big deal. So it comes overboard easily. Unless you actually test it, you're not gonna know it's meth, and then you can actually grow crystals out of it. And now you have your crystals that you want, and now you can go out and sell it. So again, it's a huge problem, and that's why I think we need to really understand what drives the demand. The supply is always going to be there. The supply is meant to be addictive. It's meant to be pushed out there in a certain way. I look at vaping. Vaping, I have a big problem with because it was my generation. Smoking was going out the doors, and this is a perfect example of how the drugs come in. No one was smoking too much. Maybe every now and then, maybe at a bar or something. But smoking is pretty much going down the road. So I thought my kids would never smoke. And sure enough, this vaping came on. It's a vapor. It has a bubblegum flavor. It's not harmful. Help you reduce your smoking. Well, now that vaping has all kinds of chemicals in it, is extremely bad for you. It's worse than cigarettes. I'd rather have a kid smoking a cigarette than vaping. And now I can actually take that, and I don't know if you guys have talked about it, but you can make honey oil, which is basically concentrated marijuana. It looks like a honey oil. That's what I call it, honey oil. You put that in your vape pen, and no one knows what you're doing. And now you have a very highly concentrated THC. So you're talking THC of, when I was a kid, maybe 3% or something. Now it's gone up to like 9% just growing it. Now they're talking 40 to 60%, if not higher, of concentrated THC that's in a vape pen on that. And and then just one last thing was we had a doctor from California. I forget her name, Paul. You might remember.
Dr. Ronit Lev.
Yeah, so she was talking about, and there's always that debate: does marijuana lead to other drug addictions and abuse? And again, it's individual. Not all the time will it, but it is a way as a gateway drug. Again, some people smoke it and they have their effects, and it's fine for them. But again, a lot of people, it's another way for a gateway into something else. When that's not satisfying you, you're looking for something else on that.
Yeah, you mentioned something about the using water or chemical that looks like water. One thing, as far as for law enforcement, that may be something that's will be very useful when it comes to prosecuting someone, because now what you can do is use that weight of a barrel. Maybe it's a 55-gallon drum or something like that.
Yep.
Now the crystals become that weight, even though it's a small amount that might be thrown in there, but the weight of the water, now that's the actual weight. And when you can charge them with distribution based on that weight of that 55-gallon drum. And then now when you're prosecuting, in the fine print, it's saying, several pounds of fentanyl crystals, and it's.
So that's mostly methamphetamine. It's a bit.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
The fentanyl is usually just powder stuff, but I get where he's going with that, because they've taken like oil tank trucks, like the oil tank delivery trucks. They put diesel on because diesel floats.
Yeah.
And disguise it. So
I have seen that in some of my training, but it's been a long time, so everything's
what's old is new sometimes,
Yeah, exactly.
So they're
one second, Paula. One second, Paula. I just want to let everybody know that's out there, on YouTube. YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook Live. We are on Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you go to YouTube and you punch in Really Charlie podcast, this show will be aired on YouTube. And feel free to add a comment, share it on your pages, whether it's on Facebook. I just add the link to Paula's page and myself. So share, and that way this information goes out to more people.
Absolutely. Okay. Scott, what I was going to ask you is, you said they were talking about the tanker truck. Explain that, because I'm how does that work?
So basically, disguise you. So when you have liquids from your chemistry class, some float, some sink. So when you have like a hydrocarbon, that usually floats. And then if your product that you're trying to disguise is lower, you basically have it down low on a tub on the truck. So you fill that up first. You fill like diesel in there. The top actually now comes across, and I look in there. That's diesel. But when I go and bring it over, I siphon it off the bottom, like a separation funnel type thing. And I separate off the bottom. Then I still have to do some chemical processes to make it meth, but there's actually meth in there. So if you ever watch those TV shows in National Geographic and stuff,
Yeah.
you'll see there's all kinds of different ways to hide stuff, and that's one of the ways they do to hide stuff on that.
So what are you saying when in reference to fentanyl coming into the state? Because obviously, the federal agent that we had on 2 weeks ago, he talked about, what did he talk about, Charlie? That we actually found it to be surprising that we had not. I mean, we know the border, we know that they're putting it in tanker trucks, we know they're putting it in the cargo shipment containers, but he said something that I think really surprised us, and I think it wasn't it something to do with fruit? I thought.
Whoops. Sorry, that's my cat.
So one of the things that comes across is, if you talk to a border patrol agent, is the millions and millions of container ships that come over. So all those containers that come on container ships, they can't inspect every single one. I forget the number, but it's millions of trade stuff comes in from China, comes in from all different countries around the world. So basically, you could disguise it. You could put in teddy bears. You could put your drugs in tires. You can any kind of commodity that's being normally transported through containers. You can put it in there, and there's a good chance that you'll actually get that through. There's also stuff like on the dark web. You can get guaranteed delivery. So some stuff just comes through the post office. It comes.
Yeah.
They take the chance. They say, you know what? We'll mail it. If it goes through, great. If it doesn't, it's okay too.
If you mail out, 50 to 100 boxes, chances are if just a few get through, it's still profitable in their eyes, they'll take some losses, but the financial gain is tremendous.
Yeah, we saw we actually the event that we went to, David DiGregorio was there, and he spoke about the gain, where he actually showed that if he were to purchase, I think it was $1,500 worth of fentanyl on the dark web, the street value of that was, I think, like $2 million or something. He said,
basically it's a $10,000 investment. By the time you get your pill press and all that stuff. I mean, the scary stuff is a lot of stuff is being found in residential neighborhoods. So that's another part of the problem. Is it's not just like in your industrial. It's not like they set up a nice shop in industrial downtown, wherever your industrial park is. This is being done in your three families, families next door. People have no idea what's going on there. You have landlords that are dealing with this. Sorry about that. The landlords rent out their apartment, not realizing what's going on, and then all of a sudden, either there's a fire, there's an EMS call. I mean, a lot of stuff gets discovered by either a place catches fire because they don't use the best practices in terms of safety, or someone gets sick and now EMS shows up and now they're like, what's going on here? So a lot of it's accidental stuff that they're finding, and they go, that's the biggest thing. When EMS gets called, they're the ones running into this, which you wouldn't expect something to be there.
So true.
So one of the things that we were told is that the highest numbers right now with fentanyl is in Boston. And obviously, about Mass and Cass. Yep. And I will say that I was in Springfield on Thursday, and they actually said that they have the highest numbers. I think regardless, this is not a competition. This is a crisis that, you're seeing it more than we are. What is it that people can look for in because like you just said, it's in the residential neighborhoods. It doesn't matter if you're in, the ritzy part of Massachusetts where your house is $10 million, or you're in a part where your home is $300,000. It's here.
Yeah. So it's tough with the fentanyl because fentanyl is mostly just powders. It's basically mixing two powders together. Again, we go back to the deadliness of it. Is when they mix the two powders together, it's not the great proportions. I have a slide that shows how when you mix it, You might get nothing, no fentanyl at all, just the cutting agent. You might get just a perfect mixture, or you might actually get a whole thing of, mostly fentanyl, not enough cutting agent on that. So it's not always mixed properly. If it's more the powder stuff is you just seeing a bunch of strange powders, different color powders and stuff like that. If you see a lot of sludge being left behind, so I always say like coffee filters, if you see toilet bowl cleaners and stuff like that are all acids. So when you go to a drug app, some kind of, toilet bowl, if you see, coffee filters, that there's no coffee. There's a, you sign just some general stuff of seeing chemicals in a place that you shouldn't see chemicals. And that can be toilet bowl cleaner. It can be your sulfuric acid, muriatic acid, those kind of things. And just strange smells and stuff like that are coming from those apartments. A lot of times too, if something's all boarded up. So like on the marijuana grows, they'll just board everything up because they're trying to control the environment inside. So if you see a bunch of windows or false windows that are boarded up, there's a sign that maybe something's going on that. And again, going back to the whole community thing, if you know what's going on in your neighborhood, I've been in neighborhoods where 2 residential houses had marijuana grows in them. And people knew something was going on. They didn't know what was going on. They knew something was going on. People coming in and out of the houses and stuff like that. But again, it's like, how many times do you get to know your neighbor nowadays? Or do most people just sort of sit back and like, oh, I don't know who my next door neighbor is. But if we all sort of knew who our next door neighbor was, then you'd sort of probably find out, man, that's not someone you want in your neighborhood. Who's doing something wrong.
There was a situation on my block where it just goes back to what you're saying about the neighbors. My neighbor passed away a year. She was gone for a year, and I had seen her daughter. I said, "Hey, how's mom? How's she doing?" And she informed me that my mom passed away a year ago. Yeah. And I didn't know that. And it's amazing that we lose touch of people even on our own block, but a whole year is a long, long time. And for someone that I was routinely seeing, and that's the only reason why I asked is because I haven't seen her. And so, but it's true.
I was gonna say,
Scott, how do they why don't we talk about the vapes? Because obviously we're starting to see that and we know the numbers, the stats. Charlie and I know the stats. I mean, 8-year-olds are vaping. How is it that it's such and I know that I had a talk with some kids over the summer at a basketball camp. And I remember one of the kids said to me, well, Mrs. Young, vaping is sexy. And I thought I was going to I literally did not know what to say because
that goes back to marketing. It's all marketing. It's the when I went to the schools, it was before COVID. So I mean, we're talking 6-7 years ago when vaping was just starting to come around, and teachers it looked like a thumb drive. Teachers didn't know what it was. Parents didn't know what it was. It was easy to hide from your parents. It was marketed as it's just water vapor with some flavor in it. If you look at some of those ingredients now, take a look at the ingredients. There's some serious, nasty chemicals in there that kids just aren't aware of. Forget the fentanyl and all the drug stuff, just the regular vaping with the harsh chemicals. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I mean, I'm assuming there's like some cyanide in there. There's stuff that you like, if you actually read it to a kid and say, you're going to take this, go to the hardware store, put all these chemicals together and smoke it. I go that maybe that would sort of wake people up, but again, it goes back to wanting to belong to a group. There's a lot of pressures, especially as a teenager. Even when I was a teenager, is how do you belong to a group? Where do you fit in? Do you fit in with the drama club? Do you fit in with the football players? Do you fit in the band? Do you fit in with this group, that group? And if everyone's doing it, if everyone's dipping or whatever, then people think, oh, okay, I'll try that. You try it once. I mean, my son, they're on the track team vaping. What the heck are you doing vaping on a track team? You also be runners and all that stuff. Why are we pushing this vaping stuff on there? The next step is a lot of these, like with the marijuana, there's ways to extract it into a liquid form. And once you extract it into a liquid form, you're able to put it in because all that vaping is doing, it's an electronic thing that's heating it up. And then basically takes the
bottles like this.
Was that one?
Small bottles. You mentioned about the chemicals. Chemicals could be stored in containers like this.
Yeah.
And
So why would so now we all
um,
heard about everything. Of course, we know fentanyl is out there and it's a crisis. It's killing innocent people, young children. It's wiping out a generation, as I keep saying. Why would the folks that are putting it in marijuana? I mean, I get it. It's the whole addiction thing, but marijuana is legal in our state. And why is it that if you're already making all this money off of the pills, right, and the vape, why would somebody put it in marijuana?
So one of the things is, and I don't know, because we see a lot of cocaine and fentanyl too. So they do a lot of cocaine, fentanyl, mixing things or experimenting. Also, another thing that we see a lot is polylabs. So a lot of times, if you're growing marijuana, you're also growing mushrooms. You're pressing some fentanyl. You'd like to be a full service, business in a sense. And these aren't the cleanest places. So is it being cross contaminated or is it doing it on purpose? And I can't answer that question for you, but I'm sure it's a little bit of both. There's no one answer to any of this stuff. The other thing too is, and then you've heard this, Paul. I know it gets you frustrated. Is, well, if you smoke marijuana, then the fentanyl disappears and there's no fentanyl con. Well, what happens when you put that in your mouth before you light up? What happens? Again, we're talking scientific stuff in terms of, I go into the lab and I light fentanyl up and it disappears because at a certain temperature the chemical will dissipate and not be active. That's one thing. When I roll a marijuana joint or do however you do your marijuana, and it's cross-contaminated with the fentanyl or it's done on purpose, who knows? It depends on who's doing what. That's when someone is going to die. Because again, touch fentanyl, you're not going to die. You have to really work hard to get through your skin. But if you get into your nostrils, into your mouth, if you put on your hands and then touch your mouth like this or touch your nose, then you're going to have a problem where you possibly overdose with a small quantity. Same thing if for some reason that marijuana is laced with the fentanyl, whether it's laced or cross-contaminated, it goes towards your mouth, goes towards your nostril area, you touch with your hands, get in your mouth. Again, it goes to you just don't know what's going to affect you and what's going to die. And like Paul says, it goes, if it doesn't come from a dispensary, if it doesn't come from the pharmacy, you don't know what you're getting, no matter what anyone tells you. You just don't know. And the cross-contamination is huge because all these places I go to, they're not clean. The maid didn't come and clean them up. They're not scientists doing nice, clean experiments. I have a little funny joke for you. Is I had a cop once come and say, "Hey, Scott, you got to come down here. I think I got a meth lab." Well, it was actually a testing state. I said, "There's not a meth lab. It's too clean." It was basically to test the oils for Eversource. And it was suspicious because they didn't keep it up 24/7. Someone come in every now and then. They bring the oil samples and they test it. But the place was spotless. And like I said, here's your first clue right there. It's spotless. I go, and they had the special laboratory glass and all that stuff. Again, he just wasn't sure because he just hadn't seen it before. But on the awareness level, I've taught my firefighters, and I had some firefighters come to me once and go, "I don't know what I have, Scott, but I see coffee filters, I see batteries, I see some salt, I see some Drano. I don't know what it is, but can you come check it out?" And I said, "Well, he's making meth." Yeah. And because again, it's more that awareness. Call somebody. I always call a friend. If I don't know what's going on, I call a friend and say, "Hey, what do you have?" But just a little bit of training, a little bit of recognition. And I think it's especially tough for parents because a lot of times parents, like you said, Paul, with the social media and everything like that, you can be the best parent in the world, and it still can happen to you. And that's the tough part. I think until you raise kids, you just don't know. Because I said, yeah. Go ahead.
Right. It's the stigma. And they talked about that on Friday at the conference. Yeah. It's the stigma, and we need to get away from that. We need to stop thinking. And I've said this so many times, and I said it even then, this is not a political issue. Stop making it a political issue because it's affecting you. If you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, it doesn't care. It's affecting everyone. And stop saying that this is an addict problem because it's not. It is an everyone problem. It is a human problem.
Yeah, it's a society problem too. And like I said, I realized it once I started having kids. So I used to go EMS calls. Why is that kid stuck under a porch? Boy, if I was a parent, that kid would never be stuck on a porch. And then you start raising kids, and you're like, oh, now I understand how the kid got stuck underneath the porch. Because again, unless you've actually been there, you don't have a concept of how hard it is. And I've seen many families over the years. I used to work in EMS and stuff like that in some cities and areas. You just don't know. And a lot of times, especially like the vaping and stuff, it was all sort of hidden. It was purposely hidden on the parents. The same thing here is they could be the best friends. And like I said, the saddest story of a girl who was doing all the right things, but she needed that Xanax or she needed that little relief pill or whatever. She takes one pill, now she's dead. So then I look back and go, well, why do we need pills? Like, why is a pill for solve every single problem we have? There's a lot of advertising, a lot of push from big pharma. One pill solves everything. So let's look at that. Why do we need these pills to solve problems? This may solve some problems in a different way and get away from this needing a pill for everything. And maybe that will help reduce some of this drug use stuff. And I think also too, there's got to be some acceptance of, and it's hard to say it, but I had someone who was an alcoholic, used to be a cop. He's older. He's passed away actually now. But he said, you have to reach rock bottom, and not everyone you'll get to. No matter how hard you try, you have to try your best. At a certain point, you're not going to be able to save everybody. So we want to save as many people as we can and work as hard as we can for people. But it really goes back to, if you can't reach that rock bottom, sometimes it's hard to recover on that. And he was in such, it's a story of, he actually was an alcoholic that worked at Budweiser packaging factory. And people are like, how could you work there? He goes, because that's the only job I can get right now, because he got fired from his police job and it's a whole story. But he says, I had to work there, and I knew that if I took one sip of that alcohol, my life was over. He goes, because that was my only way I could make money, and I knew I couldn't do it. I had to just package, because you get paid, like, say, 25 cents a case to load onto the truck. And he talks about how, you know what? I was at rock bottom. I lost my family, lost my kids, lost everything. I had to make money to survive, and I knew I couldn't. That was it. You had to do what you had to do to make it survive. And then he became a counselor. He was an excellent presenter. He used to do our EMS recertification classes and stuff. And he talked about all that. And actually he helped me out with some people I tried to help over the years. So again, you have to really get down to the root problem and then reanalyze what we're doing. And get away, like you say, get away from the political stuff of, I did this wonderful thing. I did this wonderful thing. No, let's all do something together and not worry about who takes credit for it, but just get it done.
I agree. The amazing thing is that, is people like you and Paula, myself, are doing this when it becomes a love for this, right? It becomes a love to be an advocate. You have to do it. And you have to love it. You just can't go ahead and go through the motions for it, because you're not going to pay attention. You got to have some kind of love and commitment to this, because it's so important. Too many people kind of sway away from things just because I had enough of that, But if you love what you're doing and love the commitment that you have, it makes it a whole lot easier. I think it's very easy for people to kind of get away from things and say, I don't want to do anything today. But if you have a love and a loyalty to it, it's going to just make it that much better. I mean, could be Paula and I can very easily just say, all right, we're not going to do this any longer.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I think it's good. It's my first podcast, so I'm learning.
No, it's all right.
I'm not interrupt people. So I was just going to say, one of the big things I think that happens is, especially with the Narcan, everyone thinks, oh, the Narcan's out, isn't this new? And it's like, no, it's been around for a long time. It's a good way sorry about that. It's a good way to help people. But you always have to be on the cutting edge of knowing what's next. So one of the things we haven't seen in Massachusetts, but I have friends down in New Jersey, and have you heard of pink cocaine?
Yes.
Yes. So pink
Wow.
cocaine is not cocaine.
Nope.
It's a mixture of ketamine, MDMA, methamphetamines, opioids. It looks like the powdered pixie ducks. That's pink. So we're not seeing it in Massachusetts right now. But my friend down in New Jersey, it's prevalent down there, and he's seeing a lot of it. So like I said, it's a constant battle of keeping up with what's new, what the new drug is, and being aware of that and the deadliness of it all.
Right. And actually, with the pink cocaine, they've actually also had it in Ohio, because I have a mom who has talked about that already. So it's coming up to the East Coast, and it's like you said, it's they're creating something different because look, you said it, and we hear it all the time, and Charlie has heard it with many of the guests that we have. I talk about it. Charlie talks about it, Phil talks about it. You talk about it, Scott. This is a money maker for the cartel. That's all it is for them. It is a business. They are a $1 billion a year, a $1 billion a month business. They don't care about the lives that they're taking out. They don't care. It's nothing to them. Yeah. So for them, it's the next best thing. They know right now that they have lost some product with all the DEA seizures that have occurred, but it's nothing because they came up with xylazine, mixing it in. Then they came up with the Meditone. Now they have the pink cocaine. You always have to try to be ahead of the game. And sometimes you can't because they're just putting so much out there. And then you have the 8 and 7-year-olds who are starting to vape. And you have a college student who's trying to cram for that midterm, and they want an Adderall. And they're going on Snapchat and they're getting it from someone they don't know. And now they're gone. And it's the awareness of it. And that's what you talked about, Scott. It's the awareness, it's the education, it's the prevention that we need to keep doing because it's so important. I mean, Scott, we were at the event on Friday and there was over 500 people there. And, I showed a video, the congressional video. And yeah, at the time there was 200 people, but even those 200 people couldn't believe what they were watching because they didn't think that, oh my gosh, China is giving tax exemptions to companies who actually help them to create and send the fentanyl over to Mexico. These are people who don't care and they want to wipe us out. And it has to be where we get to the point of where this is not a competition. And you said it, Scott. It's not a competition. It's coming together and knowing that we are here to save lives. And if someone, and because I told you about my story, what happened on Thursday, where someone got very combative with me at the college when I was in Springfield. And, the DEA had to step in. And again, these are people who are sitting there telling me, you can't tell your story because that's not true. And, you talked about it, Charlie, being an advocate is not easy. It is not easy because you get brutalized sometimes at these events by people who are sitting there saying, well, then my person didn't matter and only yours does. And that's not even the conversation we're having. But exactly. These are the statistics.
The domino effect.
Yes.
Sorry. The domino effect, I think, is huge because when you look at it, it's not just, and then again, I feel for everyone's loss and everything like that. That's part of the whole thing. Now we're talking about that loss is the productivity of the society in terms of what would that person have done if we didn't have that loss? And then how it affects the family, how it affects the business, how it affects, there's many things that, and this is why I really look into, and I wasn't quite prepared tonight, but looking at a systems approach. So people that design things, people that run businesses, it's all about systems. And our system is huge. There's so many different factors that are influencing this and what's, being destroyed by fentanyl, besides the lives and everything else that's coming together. And when you get good people together to work and solve a problem, you have to look at the inputs and the outputs, and then what controls that and what's good and bad. Sort of like, and this is a quick, simple example, is when you took your thermostat, your house is at a certain temperature, your thermostat says, okay, you know what? It's too cold in here. We need to get some more heat going. So let's get some more heat. Then it gets too hot. So then it says, okay, that's too much. Let's turn on the cooling system. But until we actually start getting a broader approach and saying, and then one simple answer, because not one simple answer, we really need to address every problem and realize that when you have drugs being pushed into here, it's not just the drugs themselves, it's all the other stuff, the money laundering, the child, with the child prostitution, the sex trafficking, that all comes together. It's not just one thing. And if it's not fentanyl, guess what? They're going to invent something else. And if it's not this, so why is the need there? How do we do it? And I think, again, community, getting to people so that people are happy in life and feel the belong part of society. So you're not having that sort of disconnect. We have too much disconnect now in our world.
I agree. The Scott, you have been amazing. This you made this podcast great. I really enjoyed listening to you and all this information. The best thing about podcasting is I get to listen to it again for a second and third time. Just because it's sometimes I feel like I may miss something, and it's so nice that I can put in audio and while I'm driving down the road, 40, 50 miles, and I get to listen to the whole podcast again and get educated one more time. I really appreciate this. I hope while you are doing your job, first and foremost, that you are safe at all times. And also, I want to say, blessings to your family too, and make sure that they're safe from all the dangers of this fentanyl and opiates that are impacting our country and our world. So I appreciate it. Paula, I don't know if you have anything else that you would like to tell Scott.
Yeah, well, no, but you have my question for me. So, Scott, Charlie and I play this game now. So the game is called, I'm going to show everyone how dumb Paula is when it comes to sports. So Charlie has to ask me a football question, and I can sometimes call a friend, and usually it's our host that I will ask for help, as I had to do 2 weeks ago, because I don't always know the answer. I know that my husband's on, but I don't know if he can help me because I don't know if he's listening.
He's probably better than I am, though.
Yeah.
A bad host today for sports questions. I watch him. I like him. But when it comes to questions, I'm like, I don't know.
All right. Then I'm going to ask Phil. Okay. So Charlie, what is your football question for me today?
Okay. Let's see. Can you name the pigskin on the field?
What do you mean? What does that even mean? What?
I thought a pork rind.
I thought the field was grass. It's not grass.
What is the pigskin on the field?
Okay, okay.
Think about leather or something like that.
Yeah.
Is it the football?
Yes, you got it.
Yeah.
See that?
I see my sister's on, and she's look at her. She says, "I'm dying." I don't. You all know I don't know sports. I'm thinking it's what, like, I know the grass. I didn't know we had something else on the field.
Listen, I'm trying to giving you
an easy one, actually. I can even answer that one.
Well, I test her a little bit. She kind of gives me some crazy answers, so I just try to go off the left or right field, and I'm happy that she got that. I got a smart host over here.
The grass. Yes, because I know the grass. I was just at Gillette on Friday, and that's why I'm thinking, as Charlie's asking me, okay, we went to the windows when they weren't practicing, and all I saw was grass. I didn't see nothing else there. So that's why I'm trying to think, what the hell is he talking about?
All right.
Oh my gosh.
Listen, you may be smoking grass,
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Honey, back in the day, the history of football, they stuffed a pig bladder.
Yeah.
Or they inflated it, so that's where the term pigskin came from.
See, Charlie just knows that I don't know sports, so this is what he does to me. So just so everyone knows.
Wait until next week.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to thank everybody. Phil, nice to hear your voice. I really appreciate everything that you're doing, working hard, doing the right thing. And everyone, achieve greatness. Achieve greatness is 88.org is the website you need to go to. Please come on, see what we're doing and get involved.
Amen.
And Scott, you keep it up. Keep up the good work. You need anything from me, please contact me. Through Paula, through Facebook, whatever. And
we're all learning from each other. Again, that's the biggest thing. Is don't call me an expert, because I'm sure not an expert.
No.
It's just everyone has a different experience, and if we bring all those experiences together, then we'll all make out in the long run.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, everyone on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook Live. I appreciate you joining us. Many, many comments tonight. I think this is going to be a great show, and we have many views, and so let's keep on spreading the word. Share this on all your social media pages. It's very, very important.
And we have a great guest next week. Next week we have, which Scott actually met him. Clark Kent will be on next week.
All right,
Superman.
Superman.
Yeah, no, wait till you see him. Okay, I'm telling you all. Scott met him, right? Scott, doesn't he look like Clark Kent? Yes. Yep. So he is our guest next week.
Disguise, yeah, big lead in. There you go.
Yeah,
that should pump some people up to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So,
nice
thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you, Charlie.
All right, everyone, join us on Monday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time here on Facebook Live, YouTube, or LinkedIn. And if you want to be a guest, please, add your name in the comments or send us something through inbox. Anything. We don't mind guests. We don't mind people giving their stories on here, especially if they're very, very personal and dear to you. All right, everyone. Thank you very much, and I appreciate you,
everyone.
Good night.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
God bless. Thank you. All right, everyone. Mondays, every Monday, come and join Paula and I on Fentanyl Facts and Stories. This is a very interesting show. And if you have a story to tell us, come join us. And we were glad to listen to all your stories, as long as it's associated with fentanyl, opioids, any kind of addiction. It's very, very important that we get the word out. And stories are the best things. Thank you, everyone. I see you. I hear you. Mike Sameo, I got your message. Listen to us on YouTube. Thank you for the constant support. And everyone in the comment section, I appreciate you. God bless. Love you. And see you next week.
It's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yo, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Bump into your broadcast, grab a chair, fill your glass. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yo, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Bump into your broadcast, grab a chair, fill your glass.